come and make a loaf of sourdough bread with me. So this is the artisan boule, so the pretty little round bread loaf that you see going around. It's really not hard, it's not complicated, it's really quite simple, and I've spent years trying to perfect the recipe to make it simple and yet make it easily attainable for people who are just beginning. So you first want to start with a scale. If you don't have a scale, it really makes things so much easier. The accuracy is much better. And honestly, it's a lot better when it comes to time management and efficiency. So get your scale, get you a bowl. This is a stainless steel bowl. I prefer ceramic, but it was dirty at the time, so I'm using stainless steel. You can use glass. You can really use whatever. The heavier the bottom, the better, because when you go to do your stretch and folds, you're going to want something that's going to help hold the bowl down. So first start with lukewarm water. Here I added in 335 grams of lukewarm water, and then you want I'm actually doubling this recipe, but for a single recipe it'd be 335 grams. And then you want your active sourdough starter. So bubbly, it's doubled. This is a little thicker of a starter because I prefer to go off of consistency rather than ratios or measurement or things like that. Okay, what you're about to see is me taking some starter out of the bowl. That's the good thing about the scale, is it's going to measure based on weight and accuracy. And so if I have a little too much, then I can just take it right out, whatever that is, whether it's water or the starter or flour or salt, whatever. You just take it out and put it back into the original container, and nothing is harmed in this process. Okay, the next thing that you're going to want is flour. Now I've used bread flour and I've used all-purpose flour. Both of them give me the same results. They're both delicious, beautiful bread, and my kids say there's no difference in taste or texture really. The only thing I've noticed is the bread flour makes it stay together a little tighter than maybe the all-purpose. So here I'm going to add in 475 grams of bread flour is what I'm using today. But again, I've always used all-purpose flour. Use whatever you have. Don't think you need to buy something special. I do always recommend unbleached. However, if you just have flour, then use flour. This isn't complicated, remember, this is simple. So as I'm adding in my flour, if I were to get too much, like I said, I would be able to just scoop it off the top and put it back. Not a big deal at all. And then the last thing you need is salt. I'm using pink Himalayan salt here. It doesn't really matter what kind of salt you use. You just want to make sure it's not the thick, coarse salt. You want it to be thin, small granules. So I'm using pink Himalayan, and I'm going to use 10 grams of salt. That's that simple. Water, flour, and salt in your starter, which, as you know, your starter is just flour and water. So you only need 3 ingredients to make super healthy, delicious, nutritious bread for your family. Here's the key when you're mixing, okay? I'm using a Danish whisk here. You can use a wooden spoon, you can use your hands, whatever. But the key is that you want to create a shaggy dough. You don't want to have that normal dough ball that you would normally have when you're making other things that you're used to making, whether you make it at a KitchenAid or you do it by hand or whatever. You're used to that nice, smooth, round dough ball. That's not what you want with sourdough bread. You want a shaggy dough, because your stretch and folds are what is going to make that dough ball that you're used to seeing. So just scrape off any extra dough that you have, and then I like to cover mine with saran wrap. I also will often put a towel over it if I have it to keep it warm, or if my house is, extra cold. But today I'm just going to use the saran wrap. This helps keep the moisture in, which is key, because you don't want that dry layer that will develop sometimes. So I'm going to put the saran wrap on. I'm going to let it sit for 35 minutes. After my first 35 minutes, I'm going to come back and do my first round of stretch and folds. Now what's key here is that your hands are wet. If your hands are wet during the stretch and fold process, the dough should not stick to your hands. People get intimidated, and I know I was as well, about stretch and folds. What are stretch and folds? You're literally just gently grabbing the dough, gently stretching it up, and then folding it over. And you want to do that to where you've done it around the entire bowl. So sometimes that's 4, other times that might be 8. It really depends on the size of your bowl and how your dough is doing. After you do your first round of stretch and folds, you're going to put your saran wrap back on, and again, you're going to want to let it sit for 35 minutes. I always aim for 4 stretch and folds, but if I only get 3 in, then that's okay too. Okay, so we're coming back for our second round of stretch and folds. So the dough at this point is just a lot more developed. It's not as shaggy. It looks more like a regular dough ball that you're used to seeing there. So gently stretch it up, fold it over. Gently stretch it up, fold it over. Gently stretch it up, and then fold it over. It's really a simple process, and you're just trying to make the dough come together and form more of that ball that you're used to seeing. Cover it up and put it to the side again for another 35 minutes. Don't forget to set your timer here. You don't want to go too long. Okay, the last round of stretch and folds. I'm only going to get to do 3 today because we've got a lot going on, but that's okay. 3 is plenty. I honestly have only done 2 at a time, and it worked just as well. So stretch up your dough. It's a little harder to work with now, but that's good. That's what you want. Fold it over. Stretch up your dough, fold it over, and spin your bowl. When you're done with that, you're literally just going to cover it up and then wait until it doubles in size. So this could be 3 hours, this could be 8 hours. It depends on the warmth of your kitchen and just the dough itself. So cover it up, put it to the side, go get you a warm cup of coffee and live your life as normal and wait for it to double in size and rise up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back for part 2.